Awesome. Okay, so the Power of Systems Book Club, call five, which marks a third of the way through the book club slash program. So awesome. Welcome, everyone. As usual, I would love to start with a check-in before we move on to chapters, I think it's 13, 14, 15 that we'll be discussing this week. So I'd love to check in with anyone who took anything away from last week's call and went and played with it, created something with it, or perhaps had a an insight or a breakthrough. Or perhaps if you've been catching up on the replays, again, I'd love to hear what you're taking away from this and what you're going and creating. Um, yeah. Is there anyone that would like to share something?
I could share if needs be. Um, I've been trying to work with the questions you set at the end of the session last time and approaching what feels like quite a big like uh snag or thing, systemy, whatever thing to change. Um, which is kind of generally, I mean, we've talked about this before, Will, but finding an approach to sitting down and doing music production-y stuff. I do like electronic production, for those of you who don't know, and trying to kind of turn what can be quite an aimless, fun, but like still not necessarily productive in terms of actually creating finished tracks and stuff process, and trying to find a way of keeping that fun, keeping it cute, but like actually getting like finished stuff done at least from the end of it. So I've been kind of trying to analyze what I'm doing at the moment, um, that and where that's leading me and why, and then trying to think of more creative, or like, creatively think of ways in which I can like design a system that actually gets me into the like finishing stuff that I like, as opposed to just having like endless loops and ideas and things lying around and not really focusing them into something that's like done. So I guess I'm looking forward to either now or in the future of this group sort of getting into the more kind of practical side and like really playing with this stuff um, in the future. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so I'm hearing, and yeah, we've spoken a bit about this before. I'm hearing that things are being started, but it's the finishing of things.
I
And,
think it's more. Yeah, it's more just like my entire method just lacks structure, and like I kind of don't. There's like this the kind of element where you sort of take this experimental phase and then turn it into something more arranged and complete. Just I don't have the system that I'm currently using doesn't contain a like useful way of sort of tipping over,
Hmm.
and so I'm kind of yeah, I'm sort of playing around and trying to create, because that's always been something that I'm sort of not great at, like historically anyway, and I've kind of done in the past because I've been made to, or I've had to like meet a deadline or whatever, which is a system that works but not that I particularly enjoy. Um, so yeah, sort of finding that way of tipping it over, of kind of breaking past this barrier of like idea into song, you know?
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so moving from the experimental throwing ideas up there into the refining and fat trimming and creating a produced finished song.
Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Okay, yeah. So just for anyone who wasn't on last week's call, and actually I'll send these questions out. We did an exercise. Um, we we went through three questions, which I suppose I view as very depersonalizing questions. They're helping us to really focus on what is the current system with something that isn't working. Like step one, notice what the current system is, that is having the thing not happen, not be created, and then tuning into, well, what are some of the tweaks that could be made that might create the outcome that we want. So as I said, I'll email these questions out to everyone afterwards so you can go and play with them if you haven't had a chance to. Lyndon, I'm curious, in that sort of first step of noticing what the current system is, what have you identified as the current system?
Um, the current system, I mean, it's like there's a whole load of shit, but I think the current system is that I feel like I have some time, and I'm like, okay, let's do some music. Let's sit down, plonk myself here. Um, it's uh, I think it's an important part of like the greater whole of making a song. It's like purely the experimental kind of initial phase where you're coming up with ideas, you're sort of trying them out, very messy, loads of tracks of like iterations and resampling and sort of iterating on these ideas and experimenting with them and approaching kind of getting to the point at which you have like a loop that sounds interesting or something. Um, it's sort of unstructured in a bunch of ways, some of which I think probably should like I should try and change, some of which maybe aren't priorities. Like I don't know, like I don't have like a set time in which I sit down and do this shit. It's more like okay, when I have the time when I'm here, when I like uh sometimes when I feel like it, which isn't ideal. Like but you know, it kind of I managed to spend a fair amount of time doing it anyway. Um yeah, normally it's like I'll be playing with chords, with sound design, maybe with some sampling, kind of exploring online, finding shit sometimes. It just like there's no like direction necessarily. I just sort of go where the wind blows me. And I think that is like an important first stage,
Mhm.
and that's kind of where the initial sort of seed for something comes from, and that's something that I'm like decently good at, like finding that initial bit. But it's sort of knowing when to stop doing that and then start really refining that shit down and turning it into something that I can like make into something bigger. And that's like what I've been sort of thinking is that I need to have a like a more compartmentalized idea of like what the different phases are and what I do in each of them. And importantly, when I've done enough of one and I can move and when I should move. And it's also like knowing because I often get stuck as well. What the one part of the system that I think isn't working is that like at least is like on the song on what I'm working on at the moment, I've reached a point now where I have like a couple of central ideas that I like quite a lot, and I think I'm facing like elements of doubt and stuff and fear in that like oh, okay, I need to move somehow forward in this. I'm not exactly sure how I should move forward in this. Um, and I'm scared that if I move forward in a way that isn't right, then I'll have wasted all the work that I've already done because I'll turn it into something that sucks, or all of the potential will be kind of gone. Which is, I think, a kind of not very useful pattern of thought that I've dealt with in the past. And I think that the three chapters that we read this past week are kind of helpful with.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm kind of thinking of like, okay, well now it's time to sort of start having like a plan, a structured plan of how you sort of build on these ideas, like having some boxes or some like lists that I can work through,
Hmm.
just so it takes out the sort of the ambiguity from the process. So it takes out any of the sort of kind of cloud of creative molasses, I guess, that sort of an uncertainty of the approach.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, cool. Can I feed something back that I heard?
Yeah, shoot.
Cool. I heard you talking and describing about the initial phase of the creative process of making a song as experimental. And then I've heard you describe that as fun. Like that's kind of the fun and light-hearted way, and it's throwing ideas out there and it's experimenting, it's seeing what comes up. And then it begins to take some form. And then I'm hearing you talk about this sort of crossover into a different phase, a different stage. It's something that's refining and boiling something down into say a finished product. And I heard you talk about that transition or the experience of being like standing in the doorway about to step into this other room, this other phase, and having the experience of fear of getting it right, not moving it into the wrong direction. I heard it kind of flip into sort of a right and wrong world, as opposed to say remaining in an experimental space.
Yeah. I think it's kind of this like false inductive reasoning thing. I don't want to get too psychological about it, but like this sort of thing where I'm like, it's happened so many times where I've had like what I think is like a kind of cool seed for a song, and then I keep working on it, and then after like another like 2, 3, 4 hours of sort of working on it, I listen to what I've got, and I'm like, I don't think this is going somewhere where like I'm that interested in taking it anymore. Like I think I've taken what I liked about the initial part that I had, and then turned it into something that I don't like anymore. And so I guess I have like a sort of resistance towards or fear of that happening with whatever I'm working on at the moment. And also I think like a slight preciousness about ideas that isn't really sensible. Like you came up with something that sounds fun and you're like, oh, okay, there's something valuable to this because I like it and because I put some time into it. And I think that's not necessarily useful. It kind of like there's almost this idea that like you have a limited amount of those fun ideas in you when like really I know that if I just abandoned it and started again, I'd probably eventually come up with something that I like just as much, regardless of how many times, you know. But yeah, it's just tipping it over. Yeah, going through that door, finding like a system to go through that door
Mhm.
in a way that feels that kind of maintains the fun and the sort of the kind of creative momentum of it, you know.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to share anything that has come up over the last week? Chris?
Hey, my friends. This is something that's come up for me in the last week, but it's really interesting how, Lyndon, what you were just saying about your own creative workflow um, has brought me back around to what's been going on. So just okay, let's imagine two triangles. One is inverted, and if we're thinking along the lines of a not to get too heady about this, but we're talking about a vertical axis. And so, Lyndon, as I interpret what you just said, you like to, um, you experiment with sounds, you, you gather a lot and you gradually work your way uh, up towards the point of the triangle when you have more the actual finished product or an idea, at least. Is that fair to say? I wonder.
Um, yeah, it's kind of a process of refining.
Right, but
Like, yeah,
you start with a lot and you whittle it down, and you
yeah,
narrow your
yeah,
options as you
sometimes,
get
yeah.
closer to the thing that you're working towards, right? Okay, what I discovered when I tried that is that just keeping it in the music realm for a minute, that I needed to do exactly the opposite. I needed to start with a keyboard and a and um, a melody and a bass line, as simple as possible, and then take it. I needed to do, basically give myself a limitation. Like, this is what I'm going to start with. I need a melody and harmony, and I build it from there. So my triangle then becomes it, the peak is at the bottom, right? So as I start with that single point, that melody, whatever it is, that I grow my options as I go, because then I know what I'm starting with. Um, so I discovered this through that I would start producing songs that weren't even written yet. That was my trap, because I would get so curious. It would about a sound. It would take me on this down this path I had not intended to go, and I wasn't even sure what I was working on anymore. So I found that starting with just some, even if subject to change, even if or modification, a basic melody and structure. This reminds me of what's been happening to me over the last couple of weeks, really. And in terms of larger goals, those of us in Domino I spoke to this on the last call, but I'm finding that when we talk about achieving the big sort of vision board kind of goals, that that I'm needing to set all that aside right now because it has been distracting me. And it's just interesting that I'm seeing this parallel in my own musical workflow now, where no, what's real for me right now and has been speaking to me is this idea of working with what's right here and the simplest iteration and getting it right, getting it to where I'm confident about it, because then I'm going to feel more comfortable addressing my goals, my dreams, um, and taking concrete steps in the right direction, but from a place of knowing where I'm starting from. Does that make sense? Um, so
Maybe.
yeah,
I'm not sure.
this is I know
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's analogous in that I need to I'm focusing very much right now within. So when asked to uh make a large goal, a big push towards something, it's something that's already existed or something, maybe something new that I want this year, I'm realizing it's not good for me to play in all those options. I have to start with the simplest option, which is right here. And um, so for what it's worth, there it is. Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Lyndon. That was great.
Yeah, thank you both. Awesome. All right. I think let's move into the chapters from this week. So 13, 14, and 15. And I would love to hear from anyone who wants to set a direction for the discussion today. Anyone who wants to share something that came up for them or something that they've already taken and played with. Straight in there, Sophie. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, considering I said effectively nothing last week, I thought I'd come in first and get in there. Anyway, I was rereading the chapters this evening. I'd read them the other day, and it kind of, sometimes it takes like a few days for something to process and really hit you. And then when I kind of read, I think it was the chapter 13 again today, where let me just get the quote up, where it is saying something about oh my God, sorry, my brain's blanking. I'm really struggling with it. Where is it? Sorry, guys. Yeah, just literally talking about like having a hard time asking, like powerful people having a hard time asking for help. Um, and obviously it then goes on to say about how much of a benefit and how much of a power that is. At first, when I read that, I thought, yeah, well, I already know that. Like I have been through enough kind of mental health issues in my life that I know that quite honestly, asking for help is the most independent thing that you can do, because if you don't, you end up inadvertently burdening the people that you and I'm sure like anybody that's had mental health issues thinks like, oh, I'm a burden to like your friends and family, but actually you end up burdening those people if you don't get help, if you don't reach out for support, and it ends up actually working against you. And so I thought to myself, oh yeah, well, I already know that, this is obvious stuff. But then I thought, I literally just injured my leg a few weeks ago and I've been bedbound for a couple of weeks. And I found it really difficult to ask my friends and family for help in that time. And so I just thought, like, actually, it's when you become a very self-sufficient and independent person, you can then, like, how they keep saying, Steve keeps saying about like fooling yourself, convincing yourself of things. I convinced myself and fooled myself like, oh yeah, I ask for help, I ask for collaboration all the time. But actually, when it comes to it, I'm in a situation where I couldn't cook myself dinner. I couldn't even shower in the first few days by myself, but I was finding it really difficult to ask for help. And it kind of reminded me like, actually, you're fooling yourself. This is something that you need to work on. I just thought I'd put that out there. And also just on in addition to that, of how beneficial it is and how powerful it is to ask the people around you for help and collaboration. For anyone that doesn't already know, like I'm a nurse, and I think one of the biggest things I've learned in nursing, in intensive care specifically, is there is no such thing as a stupid question. It doesn't exist, because it's much better to ask a silly question and get something right the first time than it is to be shy to ask a question and then do something that's potentially dangerous to a patient. So, and I think that like principle can be applied in so many areas of one's life. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Oh, awesome. I love the way you put it. What was it? asking for help is one of the most independent things that you can do. Like, and I love that whole chapter, like flipping that whole thing on its head. Um, and my earliest memory of rejecting help, I must have been like, I think 4 or 5 years old. I fell down a flight of stairs, in a shop, and at the bottom there was this lovely elderly woman, and she reached her hand out. She's like, "Do you want help?" And I remember, I'm like, "No, I don't need help." And I read this chapter, and it reminded me of that again today. And again, I love how it points to conditioning. It brings that word up again. It's like who you think you are, and who, what you think you need or don't need, and all of this stuff. So thank you for pointing to that. And you pointed to something else I'm going to pull out and underline, just as a noticing experiment that we could all go and play with. I sometimes think the speed at which we react with a "I know that" can sometimes be a bit indicative of some ego slipping in. It's like if it's usually a quick like "I know, I've got that, I know that," and it happens really quick. I think it's always worth just pulling that out and slowing down and questioning like, okay, how well do you know that? There may be some elements of it, sure. There's a slither of truth, but like across how many areas of your life do you know that thing and apply that thing? So, yeah, thanks for that. Tracy.
Yeah, sort of very similar to same area of what Sophie was talking about, really. I loved the bit about the lamp, where the lamp was plugged in and it shined more brightly because it was plugged in and it was plugging into a grid or a source that was supporting it. And when it's not, when it's on its own, it's unplugged, it's not as bright, it's not shining as brightly. And that really hit me because I was talking to somebody end of last week, and she was saying, well, I don't like asking for help. And she was in really quite an emotional situation with a family member. And I said, you can always talk to people. And she'd, oh, well, I don't like to bother people. And this whole chapter just sprung to my mind. And I said to her about the lamp and that. And it really sort of changed the way she looked at what she was saying. It was like, that's a really good analogy and illustration of how much stronger we can be if we plug into this big grid of all of us together. The amount of knowledge togetherness rather than your own knowledge is such a bigger pool of methods, ways you can go, different things you can try, experimentation. You don't have that if you don't plug into the grid. And that's one of the best reasons for actually relying and depending on other people to support you through an emotional situation, because they may well have been through it and have a really good idea of what you're going through and maybe have a really good suggestion you've not even thought of. But it was the way I spoke to this lady, and in the back of my mind there's this chapter going about what I'd heard, and it was like, this is just the universe telling me to say this to this lady. And once I did, it was almost like it was okay for her to talk to me and this other lady about what was going on. It was almost like it allowed her just to open up and really say how she was feeling. Whereas prior to that, she might not have gone and told us what was going on and not had any support for that. And the upshot is that both me and this other lady are now messaging her saying, are you okay? Do you need anything? We're here if you need us. So she knows she's now got the support, but she might not have had if we hadn't had that conversation. But it was just really weird the way that lamp came to my mind when I was talking to her. So that was great.
Wow, amazing. What um what effect has opening up and asking had for this person? Like, is there I'm curious to know if there's anything you noticed, maybe in her energy, um, or was there anything you noticed?
Yeah, it was the body language. The whole body just, I saw it relax. It was almost like she'd gone from being really quite tight because we'd had our business meeting. And after the business meeting, she'd sort of said that she wasn't really on top of her game at the moment. And I went and spoke to her. And I could just see the body language. She was just rushing to get out of the room. And I said, have you got 5 minutes? And I started talking to her. And after we had the lamp conversation, I just saw her whole shoulders and her face relax. Completely different body language, where it was almost like, this is okay. And I do see that with my clients sometimes. And it's really lovely to just see the body, because we don't realize sometimes when we've got these thoughts in our minds, our bodies are reacting to that. And our bodies are the best indicators of that change. And by the time she left after about 7 minutes, her body language was completely different. So just showing somebody that love and that care sometimes can change the whole body language. And it's just, when I messaged her yesterday, the message was, thank you for checking in with me. It's lovely you've checked in with me. Whereas before I might not have got a reply.
Mm. Right. Wow. So greater connection, greater feeling of safety, relaxed. And again, a really great illustration, I think, of what this book is pointing to, which is plug into the world around you, get into an action, do something, um, plug into a system. In this case, the system of, or they've reframed it as the system of asking for help, the system of opening up, the system of sharing. In other words, plugging into the world around you. And again, like it said in an earlier chapter, let me see if I can find the quote. If I can't find it, I'll put it in an email. This is it. It may look like we're bypassing or even denying psychology by doing this. However, more often than not, the psychology gets cleared and cleaned even faster by doing the thing I was reluctant to do instead of wasting time and mental energy studying the reluctance. That's awesome. Thank you. Is there any more you'd like to share for now, Tracy?
And no, that was just a little bit of a revelation for me, really, that the book was just so uppermost in my mind, to be honest. It was lovely.
Awesome. Matt, good to see you.
Good to be here. Cool. Yeah, I had a quick read of the chapter because I was very disorganized this week. But the big standout thing from chapter 13 was it's got a real parallel with the concept of who, not how, from 10x is easier than 2x. And that allowed me to kind of push past the. It's funny you mentioned about the ego thing to say, oh, I already know that sort of thing, because in a similar situation to Sophie, yeah, mental health crises, of course you reach out for help. But understanding understanding the idea of asking for help with the parallel of knowing who to ask, not how to manage a situation, kind of helped me put it in the perspective of systems management. For instance, in audio, I've got a perfect example of this. In audio, you've got somebody who's completely burdened by a large number of mixes they need to do. They've recorded a bunch of bands recently, and they've all kind of stacked up on top of each other. And I was asked recently to be the who, not the how, to help somebody manage their workload by editing a bunch of their recordings. Um, it's yeah, it's never weakness to ask for help. It is simply systematizing in a constructive way.
Mm. Purely out of my own curiosity, could you clarify a bit around the who, not how? Uh,
Yeah,
is that a concept from 10x?
yeah, it is.
Right. What
Yeah,
are they pointing to when they write about that?
if you're a freelancer or an independent person, or this is the 10x book is always kind of from the perspective of business management or being a freelancer or something like that. But again, with anything, there's parallels to anywhere in life. Um, from the business perspective, it speaks about if you're an individual and you've got a shit ton of stuff that you need to do that you may not necessarily be good at, that is a hurdle kind of getting in the way of where you want to end up. Um, Instead of thinking, how do I do this? How do I learn how to achieve, such and such an edit, or how do I learn how to copy this mix trick from another producer? The best question to ask is oftentimes who can help me do this? Who can take this off of my workload so that I can focus on something that's a bit more useful or a bit more interesting? Um, who can I ask? Who can I ask advice? That sort of thing, rather than, well, I mean, it's exactly why I'm here actually. Instead of mulling around and thinking, oh, how can I get more clients? How can I be big businessman? Who can I ask to help me understand what I can change?
Right. Right. Gotcha. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. Right. Okay, and then that tied in very much with this chapter. Awesome. Lovely. Okay, the theme, there's a theme emerging here. It looks like the asking bit has captured everyone, so I might improvise some kind of exercise around that in a minute. Um, Karen.
Hi. Well, I've got two things. One of them will take us off the theme. Um, the first thing, I was lucky enough to be in Brighton yesterday. Yay! And I always go to St. Peter's Church whenever I'm down there, and they're really, really good at asking the Holy Spirit for help. They're really good. So it gets me into the habit of, what am I going to ask for today? I'm going to their church. What am I going to ask for today? So I had a very clear idea what I was going in for. And it wasn't about me, it was about some other people. But it was about me because it's how I feel like I need to help them and I didn't know what to do. And a girl just stood up and she started telling her story, and it answered all the questions that I had of what to do. And and then I went up to her afterwards and said, I came here to ask for prayer about what to do. And um you've just answered that. And it was really lovely. We've connected on LinkedIn and everything. And then she said, can I pray for you? And I thought, I was obviously, I didn't go in thinking I'm asking for me, but I was really asking for me. And I suppose because I had that openness to hear, and um, she picked up on that under well, I didn't even express it, but she noticed that it was for me as well, not just for them. So that was really lovely because I'm not always good at asking for help. And I'm getting really good at saying yes when people offer, though. I am getting better at that. But also, I just love the idea, obviously, because I'm Christian. So if you're not, take this as just whatever. But for me, plugging into the greater source, like, try not to do anything in my own power if I can use God's power. Like, that's a no-brainer to me. And sometimes I need to be reminded of that. But the other thing is, which is completely different, is the last paragraph, not paragraph, the last chapter. And I've mentioned before that I've been listening to Werner, I can't even know how to say it, Werner Erhart, probably not Werner because he's American. And he's talking about the being of human being. And it's just like, we didn't create this world. These thoughts have been going on forever. They're not new thoughts, just like it said in here. And it's like, oh, whoa, I'm getting the same message from two different places. And if these thoughts just exist to keep themselves alive, if the purpose of them is to keep their own existence, because actually they were there before we even arrived, because these thoughts have just been going on for millennia, and then it says in here, and they're not even true. So that's interesting. Like, just notice you're having some thinking going on, right? Okay. If it's not true, then we don't have to take them lightly. We just need to notice, oh, you nearly got me there. But I love the idea of taking it and flipping it and reversing it. Because if that's not true, then the opposite also may not be true. But that gives you the freedom to at least consider it. Like, like if you've got fixed idea about one thing and then you went for the opposite, but I can't do that because that, and you just make up a thing that precludes you from looking in that direction. All of a sudden, if none of it's true, because it's just thoughts, then we have the freedom to just look at things from a completely opposite perspective. And that also might not be true, but it might just give us some breathing space or a flash of insight or something that means that we're not tied up.
Awesome. So you're pointing to Byron Katie's work that they reference a lot in here, and they I think that the way I think of it is pointing away from the contents of our thinking and pointing towards the nature of our thinking.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And just notice, it's just thinking then, isn't it? So if it's not true, I can play with it. I'm not a victim of it. It's going to happen. Like Rene Descartes says, I think, therefore I am. Like, if you're not thinking, you're dead. You can't stop yourself thinking. All this mindfulness, like empty your mind. Well, that's just not going to happen because thoughts keep coming. And so, yeah, like, oh, that's interesting. There's a thought. And now I could have the complete opposite thought and it would be just as relevant, but it might just get me out of my stuckness. That's what I'm thinking.
I think there's something very, very practical in all of this, and it was the quote that I attached in the email that I sent out earlier today. Right, okay, talking. Who's this? Is this? Yeah, Steve. One of his chapters talking about Byron Katie's the work, which they don't actually list in here, but I have found the 4 questions, and I will be sending it out to all of you in an email, because I think it's brilliant. Her system of self-inquiry put thoughts and beliefs in their proper place, fantasyland. It taught me to live in the space prior to thought. Formerly, when troubling thoughts arose, I dove right in and swam around with them. With Katie's system, I no longer automatically velcroed to each thought as if it were the truth about life. And I think there's something really, really practical in this. Absolutely. When I first came across these ideas, that many people, Eckhart Tolle has pointed towards this, obviously Sydney Banks and the 3 principles, etc., etc. This comes up time and time again. It's like, what is the actual nature of thought? I think about 5 years ago when I first came across this, it's like, okay, that's cool. Like, that's good to know. How does this help me in my day-to-day life? And I think there's something enormously practical. And Tracy, actually, I think you pointed to it really beautifully earlier with your story about catching a deer on the way home. You absolutely in that moment can be offered some thought. Some thoughts can appear, and some of them can be personal, and some of them can be, what this thing means, and it means something about you, and it's all personalized. And you have a choice whether or not you listen to it. And I think that's what that quote in the book is pointing to. It's the fact that living in the space prior to thought, when we hang out there, it means that we now have a choice over whether we believe it and buy into the thinking and the story or not, whatever that is. And so there's a lack of distraction that can go on. We can just refocus, or we can allow a thought to come in. We have about 60 to 90,000 thoughts a day, apparently. And according to recent research, 90% of those thoughts are repetitive. Pointless energy leakage. It's
Oh,
going on under the hood. Like it's just leaked energy that doesn't need to be there. And I love that they're starting to get into this because this is really practical.
yeah. I've noticed just from a personal perspective, in dealing with the sorting that I'm doing, um, I've I've noticed that I have thoughts about it and I don't take any notice of them because I know that once I start, I'll be thinking differently or feeling differently. So I just stick to my system and the results are amazing. Um, I've, yeah, I thought I wasn't, I knew I'd got a lot done, but I thought I had a lot to do. And the other day, I realized I was almost done. Not almost done, like, oh, just about to put it on the market, but like, oh my gosh, I can see the ending now. And it's been so much easier than I thought it was going to be. It's happening quicker. I'm still not throwing loads of time at it because I still have to work, but I'm throwing more and consistent time at it, regardless of how I feel. And the results are coming. So now I'm getting more and more comfortable with, yeah, whatever, I'm going to just go and do it and it'll be great. And now I'm enjoying it. So now I want to do it because I can see the difference. I can feel the difference. And the motivation is coming after the end, after the beginning. I didn't certainly, the motivation, it wasn't motivation, it was a need, um, like a financial kick up the arse, really. And it was an away from, I had to get out of the situation. Whereas now it's a motivation towards, it's an actual, I want to do this. And so there's energy and enthusiasm that's made it much more enjoyable. And so I am taking this lesson across different areas of my life, and things are just feeling lighter. And I've realized I've got a current system which is less all or nothing. Well, you'll be pleased to hear. In fact, it's the opposite of all or nothing. It's, I'll do a bit of this, do a bit of that. It's amazing. I thought I should be focused and stuff. It's amazing how much I can do when I just do that, just do that. There's no thinking about it. I'm just taking action. So, Will and I have spoken a lot about my all or nothingness. So I know he's very proud of me.
I am, and that sounds like you're working in a way that just works for you. Again, like
It does
your
for
system,
now. Yeah.
yeah, your whatever systems any of us create or are going to be creating throughout this. Um, it's important that they feel like you, that it's something that you would do, that it's a system that you would create. It's not. It's why it's sometimes it can be effective to borrow a system off someone else, but only if it really aligns. Otherwise, we're just taking something that someone else has done and we're trying to crowbar it into the way that we function, the way we're wired, the way we work, and yeah, quite a lot of the time it doesn't work. But it sounds to me, having spent time with you and got to know you like that works for you.
It is in this case right now, and I'm open to the fact that it might change, in another situation, but that's also fine because I'm looking at systems all the time now.
Right.
It's like I've got my systems glasses on and it's taking a hell of a lot of pressure away and a lot of overthinking, pointless, 90% repetitive overthinking this. So, yeah.
Oh, there's such a sense with you, Karen, that you again, what this book is all about, like you're plugged into the world, is the sense that I
Um,
get, like when you share and the energy that you share from, like you're in action, you're plugged into what's around you and not in your head.
it's about bloody time, I'll have to say that. But anyway, yay.
Awesome. Well done. And what you said there about, taking this stuff and applying it to other areas of your life, like that's partly the exercise that we'll do a little bit later on in the call. is going to be about exactly that and zeroing in on areas of our life. So yeah, we really
Fab. Thank you.
that. Um, Sophie,
Hello again. While I was waiting to speak again, actually, something you said, Will, about I wrote it down, living in the space prior to thought. And you mentioned about Eckhart Tolle and a couple other authors, but obviously I've been reading very slowly, but I have been reading The Power of Now, and that phrase you use, "living in the space prior to thought," really made me think of like of a part of that book where, because obviously the whole, for those that haven't read it, the whole thing is about like being in the present and the power of like being in the present and the peace you can get from that, and not kind of letting your thoughts of like past and future kind of overwhelm you. I mean, that's a really TLDR version, but there's a section that there's a bit that he basically says like, just if you want to practice being in the present moment, you just have to think to yourself, I wonder what my next thought is going to be. And I put down the book and I did that. I went, I wonder what my next thought is going to be. And it's amazing how like your brain just head empty for like a solid 5 minutes. And I was just walking down the street looking around being like, I wonder what my next thought is going to be. Nothing came for so long, until effectively it just got so long that I forgot that that's what I was doing. And then the thoughts started coming back. And so it's really interesting how just that one little practice just shows you like how easy it is to be present. And it feels like this thing you have to really force and be really, it's really hard to do. Got to be present right here, right now. But that was literally all I had to do, and head empty. And it was a beautiful little moment. And I'm trying to implement that practice a little bit more. That actually wasn't why I put my hand up, but I just thought I'd share because you triggered a thought in my brain there. On the theme of help, I'm going to ask everyone for some help. There's a section, and I'm just going to write to my notes quickly, that in chapter 14, sorry, I think it was, where he's talking about Katie's book and everything, and systems and whatever it's called, the work, that's it. And then talking about how like systems, like he's talking to a client where they're saying that the client didn't use the system. Like, did the system not work, or did you not work the system? And I totally get the point of that, but I did think to myself, like, does anybody else here like find that a lot of their systems just don't get used? Like, and how, not to systemception it a bit, but like, how does one make a system for using a system? Because I find myself in situations where I'll be like, right, here's the system that I'm going to do, and then I just don't do that. So then it's like, am I deeping it too much if I then start to analyze why that system never worked, or why that never got off the ground, if I literally don't even try it? And why am I not trying it? But then you don't want to get too much into the mind paradigm, and then it starts to become a bit of a head fuck after a while. I'm just wondering if anybody else has that. And then there was another quote, and I'm just looking for it really quickly just to tack on the end there. Yeah. What I love, where is it? Yeah, it's like, if I don't run an experiment, I don't learn anything. And like, what I love about systems, they're like experiments, like all that sort of stuff. I've lost the original quote I was going for, but I had to screenshot the note because my Kindle app keeps glitching out, which is why I'm having to jump back and forth like this. But oh yeah, that was it. It was about like, I can't find the exact quote, but it was about like, if you've got a negative thought about something, that's just a thought, and that kind of goes into what we were just saying. But I did think to myself, like, surely if you believe this thought, then no amount of actually changing the system will work, because the fundamental perspective that's stopping you is that thought, and that's still there. So yeah, it's not good to go delve into your mind paradigm and stuff, but if that thought's still there and you haven't done anything to get rid of that thought, and you're still not using you get where I'm just kind of starting to spiral more and more and more, and I just want to put it out into the world and let you all, I don't know, put it out there for all of you. Yeah, right. Ramble over. Thoughts?
awesome. What I think we'll do, I'm just keeping an eye on the time. Um, First off, I want to acknowledge you because this is not the first time that you have asked the group for help. You did it in like February when you came to the first Crazy Good open call, which is a perfect example of you using and working the system that is the Power of Systems Book Club. So awesome. Thank you. What I think we'll do, because I want to leave time for everything. Kate, I see that your hand's up. What I think we'll do, we'll open up the group to help Sophie. Kate, I would love to hear from you after that, and then we'll get into the exercise. And I think that we'll have time for all of that. So I saw a couple of hands go up in response to what Sophie shared. Does anyone want to offer anything? Matt?
One thing that's in direct response to what Sophie was saying about the spiraling that you were really, really eloquently describing that I can seriously relate to is something that you told me, Will, which relates directly to systems, and I'm paraphrasing and I'm probably butchering it, but I think you said something to the degree of you don't you don't build the system finds you, or something like that. It's through the process of experimentation and playing with it and running all of these tests and not being afraid to fuck up, whereby you sort of see what works. It's exactly what you're saying about the experimenting from the chapters we read. But yeah, if you're not afraid to experiment and just play around with stuff, then you'll discover the system by itself. It's like my analogy is fumbling your way around a room in complete darkness. Like you don't know what's in that room, you don't know what's in that system yet, especially if it's a new concept. But um, yeah, you'll find it. You'll find it. Just got to experiment with it. And the whole thing about spiraling into belief systems and things like that. Um, there's a really good book that is called Just a Thought, and I recently finished reading that. It's about 3 hours long. It's an audiobook. But that kind of that demystified the whole idea of we are not our thoughts. That's the only way it was ever told to me in past coaching cohorts. And I was kind of thinking, okay, I'll understand this later. I don't know what this means, but yeah, the different way of wording it that kind of came up within that book was it's just what minds do. Like that's one to discuss later on. But I see everything that you're saying.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Philip?
Yeah, Sophie, I love the share, and I'm thinking about it because I feel like I kind of get it. Like the way it kind of shows up for me is like I'll write down, like, for example, tomorrow no scrolling, or like don't check your phone until like 12 p.m. or something, or 12 in the afternoon, right? So then I kind of like write all these like decisions down, like tomorrow massive to-do list, do all of this stuff, and then I mean, that's kind of the way I kind that's how it resonates with me, what you're saying. And that's kind of like the system of the system, because the system would be to do the to-do list, but then the system of the system is like when it gets to tomorrow and it's time to do the to-do list, I'll do a couple of things, but like I'll feel tired and then I'll get distracted and I'll want to go for a walk and it's a sunny day, let's do something else. Um, I find like the way for me, it was kind of like I had to brute force things sometimes, like write down on a sheet of paper and just have it on my desk visible, or like do affirmations on my wall. But I kind of maybe wanted to share, like, as much as I also have that reflection, um, sometimes it's kind of hard. Like, I think it's like you have an idea of what you want to do, but the idea of what you want to do and the actual act of doing it are two separate things, and it's not always like because you've had the idea that you've created the system in your mind, actually taking the action to do the system is, and yeah, actually doing the system and the idea of the system aren't the same thing. Sometimes the idea of the system um, doesn't actually touch the system itself, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, it really resonates.
Yeah, do you know, it makes me think like that's exactly what it's like for me, where it's all well and good creating a system, but like if you're delulu enough to be like, do you know what? Actually, tomorrow I'm going to fly to the moon, and you can create that system, bestie, but you're never going to do it. Like it's, I think I'm trying to work out how to make a realistic system that I'm actually going to do, and it's hard to know that without experimenting. But then if you don't know why you're not even trying to experiment with it, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of hard to work it. So
Well,
okay, so an example of this, like I want to get more consistent with my piano practice, and I know when I was seeing you one-on-one for a while, Will, I kept saying like, right, Tuesdays and Thursdays I'm going to do my half an hour of music both those days, and it was like, great plan, reasonable. I'm off work both of those days, I can do that. It just didn't happen, and there wasn't any reason for it not to happen, it just didn't. But it's not because I was thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, or oh, this, that, and the other. It just head empty. It just didn't happen. So then it's like I didn't. I mean, the system doesn't work. But then, have I even tried? But then it's the fact that I'm not trying means that it's not a good system. But then where, I don't know. This shit is confusing me.
could I speak to that a little as well? I think what Will said earlier is like they're like it's not cookie cutter. Like the system that works for someone is not going to necessarily be the system that works for you. And you just said that as well. You said you kind of have to figure it out. It is trial and error. I kind of find sometimes just actually creating that distance. We spoke about this last week with Chris. It was like create that distance where it's like just sit and just stare at the piece of paper or whatever, and just like sit there and like really meditate. It's like, well, I tried to practice half an hour on the piano and that didn't work. But what did work was like doing 5 minutes a couple of times. Like, eventually, like I think you kind of have to brute force and like just sit there and meditate on it and be like, stare at that piece of paper and be like, what does work? Eventually, it does land. I think, yeah, can figure out a way.
I'm just not looking at my piece of paper hard enough. I think that's the solution I've come up with. No, I totally get that actually. Yeah, I think maybe, yeah, it's like not even, maybe I'm just not giving it enough of a chance. I don't know.
Thank you for that, Philip. Let's hear from Chris and then Lyndon, and then I'd love to hear from Kate. Chris.
Very briefly, Sophie, what comes to me often in those situations is there anything here that I can become curious about? That seems to take the charge out of, well, to use your example, I'm going to practice for half an hour. Maybe I can practice for 5 minutes. Maybe instead of practicing for 5 minutes, I can put on something and listen to it that inspires my curiosity and just try to start figuring something out. And so that is for me a go-to in those situations. And to validate your account of trying to predict your next thought, and by just sort of staring it in the face, realizing that our thoughts are paper tigers, and you face them and they dissolve. That works for me very well also, and especially if my mind likes to do stuff at three in the morning sometimes, and it can go on. And if I try to avoid getting angry about that, I can that's exactly the technique that I use to try to get myself back to sleep. Is just like, okay, what else you got? What's coming next? What's coming next? The last thing I'll say, I hope that's useful. And the last thing I'll say, Karen, since we're going to push back on Descartes, is perhaps a shorthand for what the wisdom of the ancients says, and what Eckhart Tolle says, and all these, and what we're talking about in this book is to restate that Descartes as I think, therefore there is thinking. Full stop. That's it. We bring everything else, we add on. We bring to it, the emotions and the feelings. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Lyndon.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like a kind of a large part of the whole like experimenting and finding systems and shit, like going back to what you said, Sophie, is the 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 point of trying to play with these systems is finding something that you can start, that you do start, right? And you keep experimenting and you keep changing it until you find something like starting the system, kind of finding a system to start a system is like part of the point. Like, I mean, we've talked about this before where I was like, to be fair, like I have been rubbish at like consistently practicing piano recently, but for a while, what was working for me is sitting down and not practicing, but just trying intentionally for like 5 minutes to play the stupidest, least musical shit that I could possibly get out onto the piano to kind of get over the initial like I don't know, like pressure to kind of sound good or whatever. Like, and that worked for me. And maybe you try that and like it doesn't work and you actually don't do it, but then that's not a failure. That's just a data point. Um, that you've got now. You think, okay, this doesn't work, and then you can think, okay, well, why didn't this work? Maybe it didn't work because I didn't set a specific time of the day in which I need to do that. Maybe it didn't work because the times and the days that I have chosen aren't the days that work well for me. Um, I don't know, like if like failing to start the system is like that reflects on the system. You know, that's a reflection of a way in which the system isn't working that you've designed. And then, I don't know. And then you've got like then you, I don't know, you can kind of think about creating systems to actually in like make you do it, and that could be like any like, that in itself is a creative exercise. You know, that could be any number of things. Like setting a timer or an alarm is like a fucking obvious one, I guess. But like you have to kind of yeah, I guess it's like what Will said earlier, where it's like every time you do this, any system that you create should reflect you, should be like a reflection of what works for you, and you kind of have to work out what that would be, like what reflection that would be, like I don't know if like you're dealing with not being inspired to play, then maybe you like what Chris said, you listen to something that inspires you. Like it depends on your kind of personal relationship with these things to an extent, without getting too sort of in the weeds with it.
Hmm. Sophie, I love that you've chucked that in the chat. That's not a failure. That's just a data point. That is absolute gold. That's yeah, depersonalized to absolute fuck. Awesome. Has that been helpful, Sophie?
Yes, very much so. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Awesome. Keep us posted. Maybe on next week's call, let us know what might have knocked loose a little bit throughout the week. Kate.
Thanks. I can see everything. Karen, I love you, Karen, and I love what you shared about how that's coming together for you now. And I'm also there with Sophie with headfuck going on. And that whole comment about so is failing to start the same as choosing not to? And if you're choosing not to, are you in your thoughts? Because I think that the systems pretty much keep it simple. Do the thing, get on the bike. But if the fear of riding the bike, that's not the bike's fault, it's your thoughts' fault. But if the thought is so ingrained that it won't go away, you're just not going to get on the bike, you're just not going to do the system. So I'm just, feeling a bit mushy about all of it, about system. I know what I need to do, I don't do it. So the system doesn't change that I need to follow. I'm simply not following it because there's a fear of what the outcome will be. And until have I just not found the right system, or is it I'm just stuck in a fearful thought? Either way, I'm not doing the thing. And I go round in circles about this. So I'm just curious.
Hmm. Hmm. Something that occurs to me is I wonder if this is why they pointed to the work by Byron Katie as a means to, or literally as a system for unplugging from thought, unplugging from I think what you were pointing to there, like fear-based thinking,
Mhm. So to
unplugging.
unplug, if you've always had a fear, unplugging from that, is that easier said than done? Or is it really that simple? And I get the principle of it, but you are talking to the person that it was 40 years before I learned to front crawl because I thought I'd die. Um, so I just think if there's something, yeah, if you've lived with a belief for so long that no amount of systems is where I am at the moment are going to get me over that fear. And to turn it on its head and do the work that Byron Katie might talk about, I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's great. But actually, in behind that great, it's like the fear's still there.
Hmm.
So I know all the principles really well. I simply story can't yet apply them.
I know the principles really well. I can't yet apply them.
I know, well, I slipped the yet in there because I thought if I just said can't, somebody would leap on that.
When you say the principles there, what are you referring to?
Oh, the work that Byron Katie does, all this stuff about systems. Um, yeah, there is a nervousness, and I'm not doing stuff that I need to be doing. And I'm just like, well, what, what even is the right system? What is a system? Is a system just a thought about doing something? Is that what a system is? Or is it just a tick list? Or, I need to do this. I need to make 10 calls today. Is that a system? Or should it be more fun? Should it be more simple? I thought about whether or not it should be, is the system simply about fun and keeping it simple? Is it that?
Okay, okay. I'll put this out there. I'm no wiser to any of this than literally any one of you. I'm very much in this with all of you, learning what all of this is. And yes, there's a head fuck in my part as well. Before there's any illusion that I actually know what I'm talking about. But I did hear you say I can't yet apply these principles. Are there any areas in your life where you are successfully taking action?
Yeah, obviously. Just not in the next bit.
The next bit being
Just the next bit of my business development.
right. Would you want to share with the group what that business development is?
Um, just growing, in the new year, I'll have more capacity. So therefore, it's about, yeah, growing my client base.
Okay. Client creation.
That old chestnut.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And you've talked about a fear or a thought or a belief.
Yeah, that I can't. And I know that's not true because I have. But can I do more?
Hmm.
And I don't know until I try. But I'm just, wondering if a system's going to land on my desk, or yeah.
Hmm. And what okay, so what's the result that you want? What would be the outcome?
Well, it would be to fill my practice.
Hmm. And so what would create that? What are the actions that would create that?
Me reaching out to people.
Awesome. What systems would support that?
Picking up the phone. I know what I need to do. I'm just not doing it. So is it about the thought or is it about the system?
Right, right. Awesome. Is it about the thought, the fear, the experience of fear, or is it down to a system that isn't working?
Yeah. Well, it's not working if I'm not doing it. Why am I not doing it? And so this is the swirls that go around all the time. So if it's so well, maybe I need a new system. Well, what would that be? I'm a human who needs to speak to humans, and I'm not.
Right. Right.
So I think it's more about me than the system. But all this talk about systems is like, oh, maybe I'm missing something. So it's the power of the thought over the power of the system. You're like, well, just do the thing. Just do the thing. That's the system, isn't it? Just do the thing. If it doesn't work, do a different thing. So that's what a system is, isn't it?
Mhm. Mhm.
Just do the thing. So maybe it's just the use of language in the book that by calling it a system makes it all more complicated, sound more complicated. So just do the thing, whatever the thing is. Think less, do more. Maybe this whole book is just think less, do more. Like to summarize.
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah, that one's good too. Mhm.
I'm gonna change course here because my sense is that what Sophie's shared, what Kate, what you've brought up, and I'm seeing nodding heads and smiling face. Like I get the sense, and I'm also in my own head. Fuck, I think that it'll be useful to open this up to the group like we did with Sophie, Kate, if that's something that you would be happy to do. That would mean that we won't do this exercise, but I think I'm happy with that because I think that this is presenting as more useful right here, right now. Lyndon.
Hello. Um, yeah, I have some thoughts. I think this is kind of like the main question in a way. Like, at least for me as well. Like, I think it's not. I have some resistance to the idea that it's just about locking in and doing it. That the idea of like the systems thing is that, oh, you're thinking too much, just do it with your system. Because I think like I know how you feel in that that I look at that and I'm just like, well, I'm still scared. Like I still have doubts. That hasn't gone anywhere. I think what I kind of prefer is like, okay, well, what could I do? What if I think about it right now? What do I know that I could just do now? I mean, in your position, could I like write down the first thing that I would say when I got onto the phone with somebody, like just to get yourself going, or like something like that? Like, could I break this down into something that I know that I can actually approach? And then I guess I have like a faith in myself that I know like if I get started into this, I have some degree of trust that I think, okay, well, I think I could keep it rolling in some form. Like if I can kind of get that like traction. Like, but yeah, instead of thinking, oh, I need to create this big system for this big thing that I'm scared of. I feel this a lot with creative things mainly in my life. Like those are the areas in which I have to work past the most. It's the areas in which I have the most fulfillment and the most joy a lot of the time, but it's also the areas where I have the most like resistance and doubt. Um, like in order to sort of break through that, I don't know, I guess like try and narrow it down to something that I already know I can do that would work as like a small part of that thing. The other thing that I said that I put in chat is, I mean, the topic of the chapters this week is about asking for help and being afraid and not even considering asking for help, and how that can be a really powerful first system or step. And so like I'd think maybe if like I think if I was really in a rut, it might be useful to start thinking, okay, how can the people around me help with this? Is there any way in which even if it's just like you could do a practice call with a friend or something, like I don't know, whatever. Or like I mean, like for me musically, like the last couple of times I've actually finished a track, it's just because I've been out on a night out and we're like drinks are too expensive. Let's just go back to mine, and then we're like, okay, let's just play on the computer and make a song. Like the other day, I made this really stupid song with my friend Giancarlo, who does not know anything about music production. Really, well, he knows a little bit, but knows like a little, like not enough to actually work quickly on music production. But just having him here in the space, like laughing and commenting on the stuff we were making, was enough to get me to completely forget that I even had this problem in the first place, breaking past that initial barrier, you know? And the song we made was really silly and really dumb, but like I finished it. Um, and so I don't know. I think it's easy, and I've definitely felt it in the past. And part of what this book really helped me with the first time I read it, actually, but like what I found in the past is like this sort of brick wall of all this doubt is like this internalized like belief that I'm too afraid to do this, or I'm too, it's not, yeah, like all of these like I can't sort of things, which you kind of, I guess, in the sort of therapy brain sort of paradigms have correctly pointed out, everyone would probably jump on it immediately, like that sort of lingo. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's like in order to sort of create some more hope about it, what would you like think of like the thing? Yeah, that's like be my first thing basically. How can I create more hope towards this thing? How can I sort of begin to shift this through actions that I already know that I can achieve in a way, or through like yeah, basically, I think it's like in brief, just doing it isn't helpful advice to me at least. I don't know, maybe to other people, but like just create a system and do it on its own. That's not very helpful. It's more like really the experimental part of it is like, okay, what can I do? What do I know I can do? What do I feel confident in? And how can I apply that through a system that might work to go towards this greater goal or whatever? That was a bit rambly, sorry.
Oh, it's good. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen, see your hand up.
Yeah, I agree. Just well, from my own personal history of when something means so much or when it looks so big, there's a resistance that comes up that masquerades as lack of belief. As a therapist, I would say unless you're physically hijacked by emotion, like by feeling, then it is just in the realm of, that's just your thinking. So the system at the moment is to notice it's something you really, really want and you really, really need, and you don't want to do it. Or your mind goes blank, because I've had that one. Well, I know what I need to do, and then all of a sudden, no, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start. Lost the power of speech. I've never lost the power of speech, by the way, anyway. But I'm happy to speak to you, Kate, about this. It may not help you, but I'm still happy to speak to you about it at any point. Always an excuse to chat to you. But there was something that just came into my mind, and it was when I was a new therapist, the school that I did my training with said to be listed in our therapist finder, you have to have a website. And I said, I don't need a website. I get my clients by talking to people and random people, bus stops and anything really. And my new super referrer I met on the beach when she was 10. That was a long time ago. She is now my best referring person. She's referred 3 people to me this week. Like, I just got talking to this kid on a beach. Well, her mum, really, but you know what I mean? I'm not some stalker. But so I was like, I don't need a website. It's going to be a whole load of clunk. I can't be asked with it. Boring, boring, boring. I can get clients by talking to people, so sod it. I'm not doing it. And the little bit of rebel in me was like, you ain't going to tell me what to do because I'm not doing it. And then I started working with Johnny Bowden, who is lovely. And he doesn't have a website and he is very successful. So he told me, oh, I've still got this feeling I ought to have a website. He said, no, you don't need one. You don't need one. I haven't got one. You don't need one. And then it changed to, I had the permission to not do it then. And then it changed to, but I want one. So then I built one and I did it all on my own. And I am so not technically capable. And I still think it's bloody brilliant. I love my website. Don't care if anyone else does. I don't care if no one looks at it. But it was the resistance was being told what I had to do, or me telling myself what I had to do, and naturally rebelling against it because it felt horrible. And then just taking all the pressure off, and then it happened anyway, because all of a sudden I wanted it. So I don't know, I am rambling. You weren't rambling, Lyndon, but I have been. But I just wanted to share that because it just came into my head. And I always think that if things come into your head, there's a reason, because I haven't thought about that for years.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I'll call you. I think that whole rebelling against myself thing, take the pressure off myself. Because if it's a is it need, or I feel like I need to rather than I want to, that's where I am. So then I still think it's thought-led and not systems-led, because once the thought's clear, I'll just do the thing. So I'm still, jury's out on systems. So I think it's the thought.
I heard you say once the thought clears, then the system.
When the thought clears, whatever I do will become the system. Did somebody say about system will find us?
Yeah.
I'll just do the thing. Once the thoughts sort itself out, once I've sorted out the thought, then I'll just do the thing, and then I'll be in a system. So I am thought led, not system led, I think.
Have you read the earlier chapters of this, Kate?
Yes, not for a while. Maybe it's time to reread.
There's a few things in there that I think if you had to just, because it wouldn't take long, would it? Because they're not exactly long ones, are they? But I think that there is some stuff in there which might help.
Yeah, I've had like 3 attempts at trying to get through this book. Notice my language. Yeah, maybe I'm just more of an Amy Johnson girl. Same principles.
Awesome. I think I'm conscious of time. I'll close with this offer. You were talking about how long a belief has been there and how long a thought has been there, and I heard you question earlier, like, is it really that easy to that? And I'm not sure that it is. I think there's a direction that we can look in, but I think it's natural and okay that a thought or a belief can stay, that it doesn't ever have to leave us. I think there's a direction we can look in where we can increasingly be in that space that exists before thought, that we can be with the thought and the belief, and recognize that we're the sky, not the weather, And at the same time, we're also allowed to completely forget all of that and completely get caught up in the weather. And that is the natural process of being a human, is fucking messy. It's a mess. And I think that sometimes, yeah, we can read these books and we can plug into that system of working on ourselves and this, that, and the other, and then forget that the people that wrote this are also a mess and also don't know. And they're doing their absolute best to point and look in a direction and they're trying to point us in a direction. They're like, I think that this fucking works as well. And that it's allowed. And if there is a fear, if there is a belief, if there's a thought and it's been there a long time, that that's completely okay and that that doesn't have to be fixed. That doesn't have to go away. That doesn't have to be cut out or removed in order for you to take a step in a direction. I think that that's a final sort of thing I wanted to throw out there, and like I'm learning this as well. By the way, I'm by no means the master of this. I just know that when I fall into like got to get rid of this thing, got to cut this thing out in order to, and then I will be able to. I can get stuck. I can really get myself stuck when I fall into that. Or the I must iron out every crease in myself before I can do this thing. Awesome. Guys, lovely to see all of you. Thank you very much. Kate, Matt, thank you for being here. Lovely to see you both. I'm going to follow up with a whole bunch of things, and there are a few things that came up. I'll be sending the replay link to those of you who have joined us for today. I'm going to send the Byron Katie work questions for anyone that's curious and wants to go and have a look. So yeah, I'll be following up with some bits and pieces for everyone. All right. Lots of love. See you all next week. Take care.